Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to another episode of Friends in the Field. This month, October, I am really honored to be speaking with KAren Swain. KAren Swain comes to us all the way from Australia, and she is a teacher of deliberate creation. She's a spiritual mentor, an educator, a host for ATP Media, which is Accentuate the Positive. That's her wonderful show. She's an author and an inspirational speaker who activates, accelerates, acclimates, and accentuates the new world teachers. So she's really a teacher of teachers. Supporting the light weavers and difference makers, bringing in a new dawn of reality, KAren enlightens you to power the power of your thoughts and beliefs, how they create your reality, and how to live in alignment with your emotional guidance system. This is guidance on a cosmic scale, remembering your connection to your spiritual team and multidimensional self, who you are, why you are here, and how that you can help this world. She's one of Australia's foremost thought leaders and change agents, showing you the way to a happier, healthier, more connected, multidimensional life. And if you want more information, you can find her at karenswain.com. KAren, welcome, welcome. I'm so pleased to have you here with me on Friends in the Field. We are an intimate group that likes to get to know all those wonderful people out in the community. And you and I met, gosh, is it maybe 2 years ago now, when you invited me to be on your show. So I'm super excited to now have you on mine. It's
I
great
know.
to turn it around. And we have this wonderful connection of the Mantis between each other.
I know. And I just
Yes.
love the name. I just love Friends in the Field. As I was saying before we put the recording on, I'm going to reiterate this. I just love it because, like you, whenever I meet anyone I put on the show, I instantly feel like I've made a friend. And so it's so nice to call it Friends because, we are. We're all sort of doing, we're friends. We're on the same vibe where we're
We
doing it.
are. We are.
Yeah,
We're all connected at that soul level. We're on the same path.
absolutely.
We are here to help others and to enlighten and
Absolutely.
open up pathways for people.
Absolutely. And I loved having you on my show. I loved what you said. And I was just so blown away at, because I try and find people that have got that both, that intellect and that sort of really out there spiritual that are sort of marrying that. And I think you do that so well. And I just really honor you.
Oh,
And you,
thank you.
and the mantis, the mantid. Yeah.
Yes, I love it that we have that connection. So KAren also speaks with the Mantis, or part of her mob. And maybe you could tell us a little more about your mob, because I love that you call your guides a mob. It just
Mhm.
cracks me up. And but you get so much information from them. So I'd love to know how you started connecting with this group, because I was just on a weekend away with my girlfriends and we were having conversations, and I do all this channeling all the time. And when you're in it and you're doing a lot of channeling all the time, you almost forget how you actually got to the place where you started that amazing relationship with those beings, because it feels so second nature to you now. And you kind of can't imagine what it's like to not have that as part of your life. But when you're on the other side of that and you haven't gotten to that place yet where you've started to communicate consistently with spirit, where you don't have these moments where you feel like it comes and goes, but you feel like it's sort of on, and you can tap into it at will. It's daunting. It's, how do I get there? How do I get to the place where I can communicate with spirit on a regular basis? Who is my mob? That's what my friends were asking. How do I find out who my guide is, and how do I make a relationship with them and talk with them? So tell us how you connected with your group, and how you've fostered that relationship.
Jolene, that's such a great question. And unlike many of the people that I've had on my show, like you, who have had a defining moment, I don't have a defining moment. I was always connected. And, to tell you the truth, I think we all are. I
Hmm.
think that the defining moment for many people, be it I don't know, a Kundalini experience, a near-death experience, a spiritually transformative experience, some defining moment is just that kind of sledgehammer moment to say, wake up,
Yeah.
because we're all always connected to our spiritual teams all the time, all the time, all the time. And we're all always receiving guidance. I remember in the books, which were the pivotal point for me in the book's Conversation with God. So he called his mob God, or his guidance God, sort of, biblical or religious sort of vernacular. And people would say to him, what makes you so special that God speaks to you, people that he was speaking to, or, around
Right.
religion. And God would always say through Neil, God speaks to everybody. It's not a matter of who God speaks to, it's who's listening. So God being, what is God? I sat up in bed one night. This is how I connected. I realized that the Mantis were part of my team. Not that I didn't know that because I felt connected to them. But I sat up in bed one night and I said to my guides, so who are people praying to when they pray to God? Like, if God is the all and the everything and the infinite, and you think of the multiverse and the multiverse, and you think of the insanity of the infinite, like, what aspect of that infinity is like focused on you and your questions? Like there's billions of people on the planet, and who knows how many beings in the cosmos and the dimensions, and it's just so vast we can't wrap our head around it. And they said, well, your higher self, of course, that is the aspect of the divine that is completely focused on you. So when you pray to God, that's the aspect that's speaking to you. And depending on who you are and what you're doing here, what you're doing with your life, that higher self aspect, which is like a group soul or an oversoul, can be bigger and bigger and bigger. And so that which I call my mob, which is inexplicable to explain, like they say in the Law of One books, what do they call it? Esther Hicks calls it a stream of consciousness, a memory complex, a social memory complex, they call it. It is the knowledge of everything that has been learnt and lived in physical dimension on many different planets. So it's so vast.
It's your whole Akash, really. It's everything.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
collective's Akash, right? It's like you're tapping into all
Right.
of that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's what all teachers that come to teach spiritual wisdom or enlightenment or remembrance tap into. And then some make it kind of more personal. So like you kind of get that image of, or you tap into the group of the Mantis, who are kind of, because you're a little bit more specific with what you're teaching, like different teachers are sort of focused in different areas in the vast subject of awakening. And some have it even like their guide is a singular being, like I had Blair Styra on the show, who talks to Bash, he's spelled double A, to Bash, who is a singular being that lived 5,000 years ago. And so it's so vast, and so maybe Tabash taps into that knowledge and then brings it down
Right.
to Blair. It's just so vast. It's hard for our puny kind of linear minds to wrap our head around. But so the defining moment really with me was I was reading the book's Conversation with God, and he's having a conversation with God. He's asking questions, and as he's asking questions and getting the answers, I'm asking questions that he's not asking, and I'm getting the answers. And I'm having that aha knowing that I'm talking to some higher intelligence, which I used to call my common sense.
Right.
Like, it would tell me to do things, or not, it never tells you to do things, but it would give you guidance, and I would take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And didn't give it any cred, didn't give it any, I don't know, I just call it common sense. It was sort of like a parental voice, good advice, the sort of advice that a loving parent would give you. And a kid, maybe a rebellious kid, goes, no, I don't want to do that. I want to be naughty, or I want to be,
Yes,
you can
exactly.
take it or leave it.
You know better, but you do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, and listening to, like, I used to showcase teachers in the Academy of Light when I was in my 30s, and I would listen to their puzzle piece, and they all, to me, missed a puzzle piece that I thought was really important, because many people were still playing the victim to some aspect of their life. And I'm thinking, if you're the creator of your reality, you can't be a victim because you've created it, right? Which is something that most people don't want to own.
Right.
They really don't want to own. If stuff's not going well, it's just so easy to say, mate, my fault. It's your fault. This happened to me.
Yeah,
I'm
for sure.
bad because this happened to me. So it was when somebody sent me the Esther and Hicks CD. Back in those days, they were sending out CDs. That I just went, oh my God, at last. At last I sort of heard the knowledge that I received. And it was just like, oh, thank you. Because as a young kind of girl and showcasing older people, now I'm one of the older people, but people in their 50s and 60s that have been doing it forever, I felt like I couldn't tell them, or no one would listen to me because I was young. And then Esther Hicks comes along, Abraham Hicks, and I'm like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. That puzzle piece of you are the creator of your reality. So that's
Right.
really the message my mob bring. They said to me, this is such an important puzzle piece in the human collective at the moment, is for people to remember their power, to re-own it, to own it.
Right.
Instead of feeling like that's happening to me and I have no control and I have to feel bad. And, you know, like when you own your power, I remember Esther saying, whatever's happening in my life, she would say, because she as a human was trying to live the messages that were coming through her with stream of consciousness. She gave a name, Abraham.
Right.
She said, I did that, like crash the car. I did that. Something great happened. I did that. Something bad happened. I did that. Like always owning it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And when you do, you take back your power. You take back your power. But
Absolutely.
with the mantid, I was sitting up in bed one night again, and I was having a chat to the mob, my guides, and I said, I really wanted to get a visual sense of what I look like as a soul. And that was my intention behind the question. So the question was, what do I look like when I'm not in this physical body? And immediately I got this mantid face right in my face.
Oh,
like
wow.
It was so immediate. And I'm like, oh my God, it was such
That
a
probably
shock.
surprised you.
It so surprised me. And I think that not that it's not true, like I always felt connected. 20 years ago, my girlfriend Anna Nara said to me, she was doing an ascension class in Byron Bay, or she'd finished her ascension class and totally changed her life. And her teacher had been speaking to a 7-foot mantid being, you know, praying mantis being called Dr. Lawfin. And so she was telling me about Dr. Lawfin, this enormous mantid looking being. So I'd heard about them, and I'm like, okay, you know, it was like hard to compute like a 7-foot or 8-foot or 9-foot, like a monster praying mantis. And I'm sort of thinking that would be scary. So the mantids were not unfamiliar to me. And but I didn't sort of realize how they were involved in who I am and what I'm doing. And then when I had that experience of this mantid face, I knew they were kind of joking with me too. I knew that they knew that would shock me. And it's sort of like they're having a laugh. Ha, 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 ha. She was expecting to see an orb of light, but we put, you know.
We put up what she really looks like most of the time.
Look, how extraordinarily different do they look to us, right?
Yes, they
Oh
are
my
very
God.
different. And yet they also feel so familiar. It's very strange.
Well,
It's,
yeah, to you.
yeah, true.
Uh, I had this aha moment where I'm just so obsessed with genetics. Like I studied it as a naturopath. But
Mhm.
even the other day, I had my little brother visiting, and when he's talking, I'm looking at him, I'm going, I can see my other brother, I can see my father, I can see my mother. It's kind of like I keep looking at the way the genetics are mixed, and the paintbrush, you know, it's kind of like the paint. I'm going to have a little bit of that and a little bit of that,
Yes,
and it can
yeah.
go back generations.
The
And
mosaic.
the mosaic. And he brought his kids with the state, and his little daughter who's 10, she has blue eyes and he has brown eyes. And I was even saying to her, sitting on the bed, you know, do you know how this works? And sort of teaching her about dominant genetics and regressive. And she's kind of, because she's one of these amazing kids, you know, she's super intelligent, like scary intelligent.
Yeah.
When she looks at you, oh, the intelligence behind those eyes. And so I'm talking to her like a scientist, knowing that her mind is just lapping it up.
Yeah.
And
Absorbing it all like a sponge.
yeah, and
Mhm.
that's all the mantid sort of influence,
It
really.
really is. It
Yeah.
really is. They are amazing at with the genetics and the I think and also just understanding human biology and human expression, everything from the way humans express themselves into form from energy and what happens to that energy along that pathway to becoming form, right? When we come up with disease and disharmony in the body, like how that happens, that whole process, that pathway of how it happens, they're so in tune with that, and they hold so much compassion for this race of beings that we are, which is incredible because I feel like they had a hand in creating us and they were there as.
Absolutely.
So it really feels like
Absolutely.
they were here in early Earth, when things were getting formed and when humans were going through their different revs, right? That they've been a part of that because they're so intricately connected to all the different organisms on the planet that they seem to
They're
really
so
understand the whole web.
it's like this parental energy, like the parents of humanity, yeah, the
Yes.
creators. It's
Yes.
like we talk about God, getting back to the, the vocab of using
Yeah.
God, when people think of what God is.
Mm-hmm.
And like the biblical or the scriptures or the religion say, God created the heaven and the earth,
Uh-huh.
and God created human beings, God created everything. And when you really get into it, this God, this thing that we call God, when you think of like who created the human form, it might be a 9-foot mantid being, but that aspect of God. And so to say God created it is like, because we're all an extension of the source, right? Is not to be
Exactly.
incorrect, but what aspect of God created this world. and
Right.
and the
Right.
ETs, along with the mantids, there's many other races, are a big part of designing this matrix, designing it. And we
Absolutely.
talk
Yeah, there's
about the
so much input
yeah
into
we
this
we talk about the
experience.
reptilians and how they're a big part of the reptilian brain, and the closing down of the consciousness of humanity. But I feel such reverence and gratitude to them, or whoever else created the density of this world, because they've created this world to play in, where we get to experience forgetting
Right.
and trauma and pain, whereas in other, taking on that radical acceptance, radical responsibility. We've elected to play in this world with all the rules and regulations, with all that's off, which is the forgetting and the density and the worry and the depression and the horrific happening. We elected to, and, and so someone had to design, because it's not in, take that God energy and then create this density. And that's clever. I mean, that's clever.
Yes.
I mean,
Very, very, very.
so just, yeah, anyway, it's all miraculous and wondrous, isn't it? Mm.
It really is. And it just goes to show how, well, that we're here and we're part of this experience, but there's been so much leading up to this. And we have to remember that perspective that when we're here, that we are experiencing sort of the tip of the iceberg of everything that came before us to create this experience in the way it is. And we get very attached to things being a certain way. And obviously, this year has been all about change and about redirection, about upheaval, and about rewriting the code, basically. And so it behooves us to really let go of those expectations of the way we think things are going to be, because really things have never been static on this planet. Things have always been shifting and changing, and that's the whole reason why we actually even get to exist, because things changed so rapidly from what they
Absolutely.
once were. I mean, going from a planet that was dominated by giant reptilians, dinosaurs, right? That
Mm-hmm.
would never have, we could have never survived in that type of environment. So to the place where we are now, where there's very little things left on this planet in relation to how many humans there are that are deadly for humans, right? We've eradicated so much of that. But we are so attached. Okay, now we have it how we want. Now just stay. Now just stay, Earth. But the Earth never stands still. It's just constantly moving and changing. And I
I
think
know.
these beings just kind of watch us scrambling around, trying to keep things static, trying to keep things. I want to maintain control. I want to maintain my money. I want to maintain this. I want to maintain that. And I think they just probably just have a little giggle at us because we're very small minded in that way, that we are very attached to things being a certain way. And they just are like, nope,
Absolutely.
it's going to keep changing. And that's the very nature of this planet. It's change. It's change. It's
Oh,
change.
it's the very nature of life.
It
And
is.
we have to remember that when we elected to insert ourselves into the earth experience, we did so from a perspective of seeing what was unfolding throughout all time space.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw the dinosaurs and thought, oh, it'd be fun to play with the dinosaurs, or, Lemuria or Atlantis, or the creation of the planet. We could elect to come in as some life form, be it a rock or a tree or whatever, a mountain or a dinosaur or whatever, and this time and the future. So from that perspective, remember, we're looking into the earth experience through all time and space, because time and space in a linear fashion only exists when you're inside this reality. So everyone that's alive at the moment, every single being, not just the light workers or weavers or starseeds, knew that we would be in a time of accelerated shift and change.
Absolutely.
So your soul elected to be here for this. So it's so interesting, what you're saying. There is a great part of us that came to be a part of the change.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there is a part of us that's resisting that, then that's not why we come. We didn't come to resist the change.
No, and the resistance creates a lot of
Yeah,
issue for the physical being,
yeah,
right? As we know, when
yeah,
you're in resistance, then it really sends things in the wrong direction for your physical manifestation, because it's like an energetic block that gets in the way of the way you express yourselves. So
absolutely.
it's sort of like the opposite of what humans are really designed to do. We are very adaptive. I'm always telling people that because we are filled with microbes, right, which are some of the most adaptive creatures on the planet, ergo we are also very adaptive. And we've always been adaptive. We've gone through different weather patterns, temperature fluctuations on the planet. We've gone through calamity.
Absolutely.
Somehow we always survive, right? Whether we had to go into the middle earth for a while and then come back out when it was safe.
Yeah.
These things are sort of second nature to human beings. And even if we haven't been here that long, I think we've gone through many different, if you look at Atlantis and Lemuria, what happened there, and the rising of the seas and the falling of the seas and everything that's happened.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening right now on the planet is really just kind of par for the course, but there's a collective forgetting of all those experiences, I think, because they were so traumatic that a lot of humans, although they carry the energy of that trauma, that they really have suppressed it. So along that subject matter, along those lines, where do you see us going for the rest of the year? Because, well, I should, and your mob, what have you been chatting with them about? Because it really feels like we've had a lot of restriction and trauma releasing and a lot of fear, and with the virus, and with, well, certainly the United States with the political situation and everything going on. But it also to me feels like as we've entered the end of this past month and into October, that things are starting to shift, and they do feel like they're opening up a bit more, but it almost feels like we're on the verge of another big like so where are you at with your people?
Well, as I chat to them about the current situation, what they say to me is, this is what you've asked for.
Yeah,
Like, as a
exactly what mine
collective,
say.
you've asked for change. You've asked for, every time we experience the polarity, the extreme polarity on this planet, or the contrast, or the dramas in our lives, we give rise or give birth to a desire for the opposite. So when we see unfairness, we say it should be fair. When we see corruption, we say this, we should have honesty. When we see pain, we say we should have, or illness, we say we should have health. When we see loneliness, we say we should have more connection. So every being has been giving rise to desire for a more loving, more friendly, more honest, more connected world, without exception. Maybe, even the animals and even the trees and rocks and everyone. And so it's part of it's part of the collective. The resistance that we have is just what you said. As humans, we get into these ruts of habits. We're very, is it habitual? No, that's a different word. Where we
Yeah, I
just
mean,
get
that
into
works.
habit. We just
Yeah.
get into habit. We just routine. We get into routine, and we feel comfortable inside routine. And what's happening with the extreme acceleration of polarity or contrast that we're experiencing in our world right now is it's making people very uncomfortable. And when you're in your discomfort, that's when you're pushed out of your routine and you're forced to change.
Mm-hmm.
So humanity at large is being forced to change. Some are calling it the Great Awakening. Most people have an awakening through contrast. It's usually not having a feathered nest and then just waking up one day and going, oh, I'm going to change. It's usually being pushed to the precipice where you go, okay, this is not working. I have to be or do something different. And you know, you lose your job, you break up with you get sick, you break up with your partner, whatever that is, illness and death. You know, I put out a book called Awakened by Death. Death is such an awakener.
Mm-hmm.
For me too, like that question you asked me at the beginning. So I'm bipping along in a very dysfunctional family where dad's beating up mum, and then he has an affair and he leaves mum for a pretty young model, and mum's hating on him and tries to kill him, gets thugs around to his place to try and bash him up, and then dad knows the thug and says, oh, you better come in for a beer, mate. Anyway, it's hilarious.
Oh my gosh.
Hilarious what I went through as a child.
Yes.
And so dysfunction, and then mum gets sick and die. So I'm just sort of trying to survive the dysfunction.
Mm-hmm.
But when she's dying, I'm thinking, you know, you're really putting a bummer on my social life, mum. And then she dies. And then I'm like 16, I go, so where'd she go? And if she went somewhere, like, well, she was there before she got here. So where's that place? So it sparked the questions. Instead of focusing on more shoes and more boyfriends and more fun, I started asking different questions. I've got to say, I was always asking questions, but and so that contrast, that drama that I had in my life woke me up. And that's what we're going through collectively. We're seeing people awaken and ask different questions. So as you say, what's going to happen through all of it? Yeah, more crap to come, you know, like what's happening with your president is hilarious.
Yeah.
It's not true. Oh, look, I'm not going to go into it. I've asked my mob about it and they gave me some guidance, which I don't know if I should share publicly. Might create uproar. But with all of it, and my linear human mind goes, are you being serious? Is this really going on? They say, remember, this is what it's going to take.
Right.
Like to wake people up. It's when people see the unbelievable corruption that we're living under and the lies, when they see that and it's being revealed, it's being exposed, then they start asking different questions like, wow, what can I do to help? You know, like, and it's the great awakening for humanity, really. And so it's funny because the dark forces or the corrupt forces that are seeming to be in control, you know, there's a lot of people saying, oh, they're winning or whatever. There's this fight against the good and the bad, the dark and the light.
Mm-hmm.
And from the source perspective, there is no good and bad and dark and light. There is just experience and what you learn from that experience, be it good or bad.
Right.
And so it's just oneness, really. Where was I going with that thought? Now I've lost my thought. Give it back to me.
Well, and it is all all this game, this illusion of separation, right? We are playing this game of separation and experiencing separation because, you know, recently I was channeling for somebody and we've been clearing multiple timelines concurrently lately. I don't know if that's been happening to you in your sessions as well, but, you know, we'll be clearing 12, 15, 25, 36 lifetimes all at once that are all related to a particular theme.
Yep.
And this one person's theme was around separation and that belief in separation, and all the things that ensue because of that attachment to separation, because we come here to move from that place of, because of course you would want to deal with separation when you come from and you know all these people that have had near-death experiences because you really studied that. And did you have one yourself, or was it? How did you get let's talk about that in a second. But
I haven't had a near-death in that I haven't had a terrible thing that happened to me that caused me the cats on the kitchen bench. Get off the kitchen bench. That caused me to die. But I've hung out over there many times. Get off the bench. Anyway, go on. But anyway,
But
Continue.
anyway, we'll get back to that in a second. But just to finish my point was
Yeah.
that, when you are on the other side, when you're disembodied, when you are in your all-encompassing oversoul form, it is such a feeling of warmth and comfort and oneness
Mm.
that of course you would want to experience what it is like, the contrast of that.
Yeah,
When you're in the
contrast.
warm, cozy house, it's like, oh, let's go out in the snow and feel what that feels like so we can come back in and
Exactly.
really
Exactly.
appreciate this. Because if all you
Exactly.
had all the time was the beautiful, perfect tropical island, it just wouldn't be as easy to appreciate it. And so you go out and
Yeah,
you experience the separation, and then you can
exactly.
say, oh, yeah, separation is, wow, what a kicker. And that is, but look how much I learned, and look how much I absorbed, and look how much I have
Oh,
evolved
yeah.
my soul because I went through those experiences of separation. So,
It's really interesting. I was talking to the beautiful Blossom Goodchild on the show the other day who channels. And she channels the Federation of Light. She told me
uh-huh.
not to call it the Galactic Federation of Light because that's a different intention. And then she has a personal guide who she calls White Cloud, who appears to her as a, Indigenous, a Native American Indian
Hmm.
elder. So when she was channeling White Cloud on the show, I asked her what her relationship to White Cloud was and or is. And she got very uncomfortable. And then White Cloud kind of kicked her uncomfortableness out and said, well, basically they're the same. And then as she came out of channel, she said, that doesn't work for me because I see him as separate. And it just sort of dawned on me that sometimes that separateness that we experience as humans is so wanted and
Yes.
delicious. So
So,
I can play my part in the role of this personality. I have to be separate to another aspect of me who's a completely different personality.
right.
So my guides came through and said, well, it just looks like me talking really, just like, well, you are separate because you're a different idea. You're a different creation. You're a different character. And she's an
Hmm.
actress, and they used an acting analogy. They said, if you look at a movie and you see one character, and then you see a different movie, and then you see another character, they're two completely different characters, two separate ideas, two different creations, same actor.
Right.
So there's this, when we come to play in separation,
Yeah.
and sometimes it serves us. So it's not like we have to feel one with everything all the time, which is a lot of spiritual teachers talk about.
Hmm.
It's great to do that, but that's what we do when we're dead. When we're dead, we just feel one with everything. We've not
Yes.
come to feel
Yes.
one with everything while we're exploring separation. But how much separation do you want to explore? Like,
Right.
how much do you want? So what we're doing collectively as a human race is we're moving into more unity, not complete unity, because that complete unity is who we are when we're out of this dimension, right? Or
Mhm.
back in the spirit side, as Garnet calls it. But we're moving into more unity and uniting, and as a human collective, could we just unite? Because we've explored separation to the nth degree, which we can't even get on
Right.
with our neighbor, our brother, our mother-in-law. We're just
Right. Right.
it's out of control separation. But
It is.
my little
Countries,
brother,
the very concept of country, or this is a
yeah,
separate, or like who said, you can't own the earth, right? And the whole concept of
boundary,
ownership,
yeah,
this is
yeah,
mine, that's
yeah,
yours, this is mine.
yep,
I own
yeah,
this. It's like you
yeah,
can't really own anything. Everything is
yeah.
just free, and it's unless, right?
You
It's
see,
moving.
you see babies do this. It's so interesting. You see babies start to understand this concept, like toddlers,
Hmm.
when playing with a toy, and then a child will sort of like go, no, you can't play with it, it's mine. And they get so fixed on it being mine. It's almost as if they've come out of that babiness where everything is one, you're one with everything, and then they start to really experience separation, and they start to and then we
Right.
call them
Grasp that
naughty. Yeah,
concept.
grasp it, like they're starting to play with it and grasp it, and then we're like, don't be so mean, don't be so naughty,
Oh, yeah.
share your stuff.
Yeah.
But if we just looked at the child and went, ooh, they're starting to get a concept of what mine is, because they felt one before. I mean, some children do it more than others, but it's just the soul coming into this separateness that we've landed in on
Yeah,
planet Earth.
embracing
Yeah,
it, embracing the
embracing it.
experience. Yes, yes, yes. Totally agree with that. Hadn't thought of that from that perspective. That's a really good perspective. But it's so true. And I think though, then like you said, it runs amok in adults
It
in which
runs
there's a
amok.
whole lot or too much me and mine, right? Me and mine, me and mine. And sorry, you don't have, and that's too bad. And at least in this country anyway, in the country
Oh,
that
look,
I am from.
well, I was, my little brother who was here, he sent me a text the other day and he said he really loved this movie, uh, The Kingdom of Heaven. It came out in 2005. It's a historical things where everyone's fighting each other, but it's all over Jerusalem, the Holy Land, back in
Uh-huh.
the 1500s or something, 1200s, I don't know, 1500s. Anyway, and it was when the knights owned Jerusalem, like the white people, the Catholic, the church,
Yeah,
and then
yes.
the Muslims took it back, and they're all fighting over Jerusalem. The whole, that's the
Yeah,
kingdom of heaven. It's kind of
yes.
more like the kingdom of hell. But anyway, as I'm watching, so I thought I'll watch it because he loves it. I thought I'll watch it last night. It's like a 2-hour movie of people just killing each other and cutting off their heads. Anyway, it's got a lot of religious stuff to it, but I was just thinking, as a human society, we've been through so much darkness that's
Yes.
chopping off somebody's head and slaying blood everywhere, just like willy-nilly, just murdering people. We have to remember that we are in a time of light. We're coming out of the darkness. So as much as
Mhm.
we're seeing the contrast and the control now, it's nothing to what it was a few hundred years ago.
It's very true. It's very true. We don't even, put too much weight on that fact, but it is very true.
Yeah,
Things were very difficult, not to mention, if we're worried about the pandemic that's happening right now, and not to mention, when bubonic plague was traveling through and wiping out most of the population on the planet. So it's not the first time that that's happened. I really think, it's all about nature is always going to rebalance things on the planet when things get out of balance. It's just what nature does. It's just just the sort of the natural evolution of things. And so it's the same with the virus that's going around right now. It's just a natural evolution of humanity and of the whole web of life, right? It's just
yeah. I think the virus that they're calling the enemy. Um, okay, let me restate that. I think viruses in general, not the virus that we have named. I'm not going to give it a name.
right.
Everyone's talking about it so much. Are a part of the evolution of the human body. And
Absolutely.
yeah, did you see the chat I had with Tom? Man, names. Um, Barnett. I did a Facebook Live with
I
him.
don't think so.
Oh, you have to check it out. He's such a cool dude. He's an Australian guy. Anyway, he studied um, microbiome, all that stuff. He
Yeah,
studied it
yeah.
all. And so we had this really amazing online chat all about it. Like, he came out with a video right at the beginning, I think in April, saying you can't catch a virus. And it was really controversial because everyone was shutting down the countries all over, everyone was
Right,
shutting down the
right.
world. And he's come out and said, you can't catch a virus. And, he said, not only can you not catch a virus, when a virus is in some part of the body, it can't even be, it's not even contagious to another part of the body. It can't even travel through the body. It kind of stays, specific viruses stay specific to the part of the body that they're in. And anyway, you might have a different perspective on that. I'd be interesting. I'd really love to see the two of you have a conversation. Um,
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I think that human biology becomes receptive to the energies around it for different reasons.
mm,
And we are constantly interacting with our environment. And if there's something in our environment, I don't think that this particular virus is is much different from any of the other viruses around in that the vibration of that particular organism is matched by our vibration. Viruses feel very metallic to me that
mhm,
they work with. I think that's why they're always they usually hide out in our nervous system and they get activated by energy
mm.
along the nervous system. They have that sort of electric quality to them when there's electricity going through the nervous system, right? And electrical signals, and then they awaken from those. And so I feel like people who, what this whole situation really points out is that many, many human beings were living in a way that was not in congruency with living a balanced life. They weren't eating
Absolutely.
healthily. They are eating a lot of
Absolutely.
processed and preserved foods. They're eating a lot of
Absolutely.
different oils that are turning to toxins in their body. They're stressed, and they're doing a lot of things that put them into an immune compromised position. Therefore,
Absolutely.
anything that comes along, it could be the common cold that could take somebody down. Now, there happens to be a lot of focus, national and world focus on this particular one, and there were a lot of people that got ill with it, and many passed because they were in this state of you know immune compromised. So it could have been something else that took them down. They
Well,
could have come down with cancer. There's so many people dying of cancer every day, and
oh
because it's
God,
not
yeah. So many
communicable.
more. Look, what my guides have
No.
said to me, and they're just reiterating it, because that's when I stopped and I was like, changed my thought, because they just gave me an image,
Uh-huh.
is that the particular one that we're talking about was tweaked in a laboratory setting to become more virulent and stronger. And it didn't work. It just didn't work. It didn't do what people wanted it to do. It was deliberately put out there, and it didn't do what they wanted it to do. And so the the onslaught has come more from the media than from the virus itself.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yes,
so
they could use a little of accentuating the positive from your media.
they've
Really
been
good.
accentuating the negative. Like, let's accentuate, because people, people don't understand the power of their mind.
I
So
know it.
this is why the media is such a powerful force, and this
I
is why I
know.
went on media. When I did a healing
Yeah.
course and realized that we are hypnotized through media, through music and screens. We go into a theta brainwave, we relax. You watch television or any screen and you relax and just watch. You actually drop into a theta brainwave. And when you're in that theta state, you're much more susceptible to ideas. They kind of bypass the
Hmm.
logical resistant mind and they go straight into the subconscious. And so
Hmm.
this is what
Hmm.
media does. It hypnotizes us. It's like, I was getting off a plane years ago and we were stalled on the tarmac, and so while we were waiting, people kind of sat down and they were just watching the screens on the, and I had this like view of all these people just staring at this little screen, just like robots. And I'm like,
Yes.
oh wow, it sort of hit me because I was standing up in the aisle. I didn't sit back down and I just looked at everyone staring at these little screens, and I just felt like it's just a mind controlled device. I'm sorry, it's like a mind control device. And when you understand how media works, you understand how to control a population. And
Hmm.
that's what the media has been doing.
Absolutely.
And
I would have to agree with you about
it's
that.
powerful. It's so powerful. We are so suggestible. You make a suggestion, you put a few facts behind it, and everyone's out there arguing about the truth.
Right.
And
Exactly. Or the mistruths and the things with all the social media now that the mistruths get way more hits than the actual truths because they're not as exciting or sexy. And the thing about in the United States, and I'm not sure if this is the same in Australia, but there's like two or three giant conglomerate media companies that are controlling all of the information that's going out, all of the
absolutely,
TV programming, everything, the movies that are getting made, everything.
absolutely,
And so it's all coming from a very small source.
absolutely.
And therefore, it's true. We're sort of just pawns in believing anything that those sources want us to believe, right? We get exposed to whatever. I mean, is that really what was happening in that moment that was reported on? Is that really how it happened? And you would hope that journalists who go to college and they've got these, especially when they're young, they have high integrity and they really want to make a difference. And I think that a lot of times people get into those situations with those big companies because they desperately want to get a job and they want to do the right thing. And they write the story in a certain way and they're saying, sorry, we're not going to publish that part because that doesn't tell the story in the way that our media conglomerate wants it to be told. They want it to be told in a different way.
Oh, Jailene, every system is like that. The medical system, I feel, a girlfriend of mine asked me to go to the oncologist the other day to get her diagnosis. She was diagnosed with, according to the oncologist, incurable liver cancer. So I was there for that
Mm.
conversation the other day, right? And
Uh-huh.
I'm listening to this doctor, and yeah, man, she was beautiful. She had the most beautiful eyes, but her heart was so closed. She
Mm,
was so in her head. And I'm thinking she has to have a closed heart to do the job that she does.
right.
Um, and good people that want to make a difference in the world, they become, journalists and doctors, and they get caught in a system which pays them unbelievable amounts of money. They now put themselves in huge debt because they get the house, and then they get a pay rise, and they get the bigger house, and then they get the cars, and then they put the kids in school, and now they're just completely tied down with debt. So they're absolutely reliant on that paycheck, and they're in a system that their soul doesn't want to be in, because their soul wants to really help humanity, but they're caught in a system that's paying their bills, and they kind of can't get out. And I see that all the time. And and the journalists are the same. It takes a brave person to sell the house, get rid of the paycheck, and become an independent thinker and try
Yeah.
and carve out a business doing
Yeah.
something that, yeah.
And you get a lot of flack for it, right? It's not
Mm.
something that your most people's families would say, "Hey, that's a great idea," or their friends or anything. You really have to be quite a maverick to pull that off.
Yeah.
So I want to get back to something that we were talking about a little earlier because I think this is really interesting. You've got a lot of experience in it. So over this past year, there's been a big highlight on the number of people that have died, right? So people are dying all the time anyway, right?
Mm.
Cancer, what have you, or just heart attack, car crashes. I mean, those numbers are skyrocket in
Oh,
most parts of
absolutely.
the world. But right now we're focused on the number of deaths as associated or connected to this particular, whatever you want to call it. So all those people are transitioning, right? There's this massive transition going on. There's this large transition going on. And you spent a lot of time talking to people who have gone through those transitions and then who've come back to talk about what's going on
Yeah.
the other side.
Yeah.
And then you've got your own experience. We touched on this a little while ago, but we didn't really get into it. So I'd love to hear more about that because I think that's an area of great interest for so many people. So first of all,
Mm.
there's all these people transitioning. Why would so many people transition in 2020? What's
Okay.
behind that? And I
I,
obviously I
I
have
want to
no
clear something up here,
idea.
because this is what my guides have said from the get-go.
Okay.
There are less people transitioning at the moment than there have been. So what they said right from the get-go
Mm-hmm.
is that a couple of times I turned on the news and I saw the football tally of deaths and people getting it. And they said, if you did that on a daily basis with people that die on this world, it would actually be a much larger number because of what we have been experiencing with the lockdowns and everything. There and the biggest the biggest number of deaths come through medical malpractice. That's the biggest number of people that die, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the hospitals shoot away a lot of their patients because they were ready for the onslaught of the pandemic, right? And that kind of didn't happen. And they have said
Right.
to me repeatedly, and this is them speaking because that's what they said to me, because my daughter she's believing the mainstream narrative. And she's like, Mom, we're in a pandemic. And I'm like, we're not in a pandemic. Because my guide said to me, we're not in a
Mm-hmm.
pandemic. And she's like, Mom, you don't know. And she got really angry with me. So I check in with them again, and they go, and this is what they said to me. They said, if you tallied up the amount of people that would die, you'd be shocked at how many people come and, leave this planet on a daily basis. There's just millions that die from things all over the world. But when you see it as a football score on the news every day, you get to see. And so they're saying there isn't a massive amount of people leaving the planet right now that is any more than any other time. And
Mm-hmm.
statistics have come out to prove that there have been less people that have died from the particular virus than die from normal flu season.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a pandemic. We're not in a pandemic.
Right.
We're believing a mainstream narrative that says we are, and that's that's part of the rhetoric that we're being shown.
Well,
So,
I think
but the
that,
question, the
well, I was
notes is
just
what
going to
I
say
say.
that
Yeah,
would even outside of all that, it to me, I have been personally connected to so many people that have passed this year unrelated
yeah,
to that I
I
do
relate.
think that
Yeah,
there's a bunch of souls that are saying, okay, I'm going to hit the reset button because either they're clamoring to come back as a young person again, and start over and really get into the juicy, meaty part of this transition we're going through, in probably
Mm,
20 years,
yeah.
30 years. What's your feeling on why so many souls are transitioning? Because it does feel like there's more people just for whatever reason. They're like alive one day and gone the next.
Yeah. Uh, uh, mm, well, okay. I'm struggling to find the words because from our linear perspective, we think of life and death. And from the soul's perspective, there is life and life.
Hmm.
So there is life in this reality and every other reality, and your soul is inserted in all these different games. It's like playing multiple video games all at once, and then you finish one game and you
Right.
turn it off and you focus. And that's kind of like the greater scheme of things. I'm sort of talking from this higher perspective. So
Right.
we down here in this sort of linear mind perspective, we think of life and death, and you're here and then you're not. And we, one of my big passions and what I do with my work, and especially the book called Awakened by Death, and a lot of the people I have on my show, is to show that there is no such thing as death. So
Hmm.
there is only life and then more life. So there's life in the physical reality, and then there's life in other realities. So be other planets or other dimensions, or life as a spirit or a spirit guide, or an angel or an ascended master, or this is our multi-dimensionalism. We can be a mantid or a spirit guide or a grandma or a father. We just get to play in all these different realities. And uh, so why are there so many people? Again, I'm going to come back to, they're just saying there are not more people transitioning at the moment. That's just a perspective that you're seeing probably in your own life. There was a few years back, where 12 of my personal friends left the planet. It just seemed I was like at a funeral every month.
Yeah.
And so it looked like, oh, wow, there's a lot of people leaving the planet. But that was just my personal perspective.
Mm.
It wasn't the greater perspective.
Hmm.
But what is happening through our mainstream media outlets is that we're being shown deaths. And so we're having this idea that there are more people leaving the planet. I would love to give you an answer like there are some, yeah, like some reason that there are a lot more people leaving the planet right now for whatever reason, but it's just, that's not what they're saying.
Yeah.
People come and go. People are making choices. Everyone has a different idea of what they want to experience in life, different karma.
Hmm.
Everyone, even though everyone that's on the planet right now, be it young or old, are here to experience the shift or the change in consciousness, or the change or the acceleration of change. We all have our own ideas of why we're here, our own, the soul has their own agenda, if you like.
Hmm.
We're getting to experience this world from this perspective for some idea. And so I'm kind of not answering your question
No, I
because,
get it. No, you did answer it,
yeah,
and that's totally
but
fine that that's the perspective, and it makes sense.
I'm going to just say they're kind of giving me some personal perspectives that kind of touched on what you were saying. So it kind of touched on what I was saying with Blossom too. So there are many light workers on the planet, like millions, that have come down and said, I'm going to be a big part of the transition of this world. I'm really going to help this world
Yeah.
shift into a new consciousness.
Yeah.
And then they come into this third dimensional reality, and they get kind of swept up in ego and swept up in density and swept up in routine and the habitual mind and, all the things that we're talking about. And they totally don't. They don't do it. I see that even in my family.
Yeah.
I have to say that the beautiful brother that visited the other day, he is a light worker in the military. He is a light inside the military, and he knows it. And he's doing his best. He doesn't have this conversation we're having,
Right.
but he knows who he is. And then I have other brothers that have got lost in status and Mercedes Benzes and, and paying mortgages, and a brilliant galactic mind. Like one of my brothers would take apart, at 8 years old, he'd take apart the television to see how it worked. Like curious mind, like such a galactic being, completely obsessed with sci-fi. And he's so entrenched in the
Mm.
third dimensional now,
Yeah.
like polarity. And
Yeah.
no, I've tried to wake him up. It's like I can't wake him up. He's had a heart attack. That didn't work. So there are some souls that might elect to take, as a soul, we plan in different exit points.
Hmm.
Uh, And so there are some souls, and they're from their soul's perspective, not from their ego perspective. They might take an earlier exit point because they might kind of regroup and come back and try again to sort of be more aligned with their soul's desire, let's
Right.
say.
Right.
So this is what the awakening is. It ain't always easy, and it ain't always pretty, when your soul wakes you up, because it might wake you up with illness or death, as I say, and then it asks you to be like a different person, to be more less selfish and more loving, and sort of give away stuff and be more united. And the ego mind is kind of me and mine, like we talked about.
Yes.
The little kid explores it, and then it's like my money, my house, my family. I've got to be there for me and pay my bills and look after my family. And we're all kind of all in this me and mine, instead of being more, what can I do for the community at large? And
Right.
So my guides have said to me that, just so many people said, yep, I'm up for that, I'm coming. And then they got lost in the third dimensional. It's like, it's not a test. We don't fail to sort
No.
of, but it's a challenge.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge that we either kind of rise to the challenge or don't. And we're not judged when we die, like, oh, you were bad. It's like we try to scale the mountain, we get exhausted, we can't do it. We go, oh, I didn't do it, I'm going to try again.
Yes.
Like, I'll do it better next time. I can do it. I know I can do this. I know I can do this. And so like, we come from love, and then we come into this place where we forget we're love. And then we get so caught up in forgetting we're love. We're all about me and mine and what can I get and what can I get. And then we die and we go, oh, damn, I forgot I was love again. I can do it better next time. I know I can remember next time, So it's kind of like that.
Yes.
So in that respect, they're kind of saying there's a small percentage of people that are doing that. That are doing that, yeah. But they just showed me, when I was talking to Blossom the other day, how many people have not woken up, even though they've had plenty of opportunity to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I wonder about as well. There's so many people on this planet that I think have had opportunities to shift, and yet they have not. And so, yeah, it makes you wonder, what's it going to take, right? Yeah, so it's just going to take time. I think it's just a really slow plot. I think that a lot of times we want things to go very quickly in the evolution of our species. And it's really a slow trudge through experience, and experience drawn out, because this is the only, well, one of the only dimensions where we experience time and space in the way that we do here. And this sort of, the sphere is unfolded and laid flat, so it feels linear. But since we know everything's happening simultaneously, and we've already experienced all of it, and I think you touched on that earlier, that because it's all happening in the now, and you've already had that future life right now, you've already had that past life, and they're all connected. When we're here and we're experiencing it in a linear form, we get very caught up in that, and it's sort of a bit stymied by it, and think that, oh, this is taking forever, but really it's not. It's all happening in that now moment, that instantaneous. And I think that's one of the hardest things for humans, is to be patient and to wait. And because we think of it as waiting, as opposed to, instead of really focusing our attention into the present moment, because as soon as you really do that, then the waiting is over. There's nothing to wait for, because then you suddenly realize, oh, I am connected to everything. I'm connected to my future self, my past self. But when you're in that, when you're worrying about the past or anxious about the future, then you're not in that present where you can actually connect into all that you are. And so then you become patient. Like, when's it going to get better? When's it going to get better? I'm tired of humanity not waking up. But that feels like a function of not realizing that you are actually already woken up. That we are all
exactly.
already woken up.
And then we have to take into account parallel lifetimes. So it gets so mind-blowingly expansive that it's so hard to wrap up. So we might be on a trajectory, we might be in one story on this life, but we might be living we might be the same person, the same body, the same personality, and having a completely different experience in a parallel life. So like that movie Sliding Doors, where the decisions that we make in this life put us on a path or a trajectory, and then if we make a different decision, we're on another path, and so we're living these.
Right.
And
Right.
I have a friend that died at 40. She was 40 when she died. She was born in the 60s under the drug thalidomide, and so she was one of the but she was deformed internally and externally, but more internally. She was very sick all her life. Anyway, so she died at 40. I remember my girlfriend, a couple of years before that, my other best friend committed suicide, and she came over to comfort me. I'll never forget the look on her face, bless her heart. She walked into the house, and she was always at death's door, and I looked up, I was crying because my other girlfriend had committed suicide, and I said, "You're not going anywhere, are you?" I screamed at her, and she just looked at me and went, "No, I promise." Like, anyway, a couple of years later, she was out of here. But and I spoke to all of them on the other side, and they were perfectly happy to be dead. And but all of them told me they're not dead. Like, I didn't die. We don't die.
Yeah.
Anyway, so.
But perfectly happy is generally very often the way, right? Unless they've died with a bunch of trauma that they haven't dealt with, or they're very stuck or attached.
So in
right?
this life, because of her problems with her health, she could never get health insurance, and so she didn't travel because she needed it, because she was sick all the time. So when she traveled, she was going to be sick. She had a hole in her left and right ventricle of the heart, and so she was mixing the oxygenated and unoxygenated blood. So she was blue a lot of the time anyway. And in this parallel life, she traveled the world. She was healthy, and she did all that. So she experienced the desires birthed as sick Nikki. She created well Nikki, same personalities, same body, same boyfriend, and they traveled the world. So it's interesting. We can, this matrix, this game of life, we are creating it. We are creating it. So I just want to remind people that, what we're seeing as reality is your creation.
Well, and it's your creation, but it's also the creation you're making of yourself in physical as your reaction to the collective. So, because we're all in this together, right? And everybody's co-creating at the same time. And so you're not really doing it in a vacuum either. That's the really hard part to wrap your head around, I think, is when we talk about creation or manifestation, because sometimes people are wondering why they're unable to manifest something when I followed all the steps, and why isn't it happening? Because you're not the only one participating in the co-creation of your life. And furthermore, you're reacting to everything that's happening around you and responding and holding resistance to, or going towards something, or trying to block something, and creating all this energy within your field that makes it either possible or impossible for you to manifest those things that you wish to bring forward, or, to really embrace the whole concept of being the creator of your reality. That's one thing that we can say, but for people to actually embrace it to the point where they can utilize it and actually create what they want to, really requires them to do more than just say, "Oh yeah, I'm the creator of my reality," right? They have to actually let go of all the things that keep them from being able to actually do that in motion or in action. At least that's my perspective.
I think that we get as linear-minded humans that are focused on this material world, the material body, the material world, the stuff, the computer, the house, the stuff, the experiences, we get so lost in the illusion of material. When we say we're creating our reality, the reality that we're creating is not the stuff or even the experiences. So it's not the pandemic, not the pandemic. It's not the health or the sickness. It's not the lover or the not lover, the loneliness or the joy. It's not the community. It's none of it. What we're creating is how we think and feel. So anything can happen. And we experience it through the choices that we make about how we view it, how we respond to it, how we react to it. That's what creating your reality is. It's not I'm creating a new job, or I'm putting myself out there as a new world teacher, and I'm creating millions of people following me, or a platform on YouTube, or a new website. That's actually not what we're creating. We're creating how we're thinking and feeling about who we are and what we're bringing and how we feel about that. That's what we're creating. All the rest of it comes along for the ride. Like I learnt this, well, I chewed it over for a good long time, but I learnt this from a guy. I went in 1995, I did an Anthony Robbins course in Maui,
Uh-huh.
and one of the speakers just, blew my mind. He was a guy, and I can't remember his name, and I don't even know if he's still alive anymore, but he spent 7 years in a jail in the Vietnam War. I never remember. Okay, Vietnam War. They say, yes, you do. So the jail cell was about 3 foot high and about 7 foot long, and he ate and defecated in this space. And I think they took them out either once a week or once a month to walk them out around and they weren't allowed to talk to each other. So they created their own Morse code. But he said inside this experience, which would be the worst experience you could ever imagine,
Right.
imagine eating your dinner and surrounded by your shit and your urine. I mean, right. And having never changed your clothes or had a bath, right? I mean, imagine it, right? It's the worst physical experience.
Yeah.
He experienced bliss.
Wow.
Because he took his focus off the material world and he put it on who he is as a soul. And so, to sort of talk about like a lot of the conversations I've had on the show, like he sort of astral traveled, he touched the divine, he experienced who he is as unconditional love. He was free. His body was in jail, but his soul was free, and he identified more with his soul than he did with his material reality. And he came out of that experience as a teacher, and he traveled the world teaching people how to unlock the jail cell of the mind. So you see, it's our mind that is creating our reality, not what's happening to us. So yes, we are co-creating. So we're experiencing stuff, but how we're thinking about it, how we're responding to it, how we feel about it is the reality that we're creating. So whether we're experiencing the worst of life or the best of life, how we're experiencing it is up to us. I remember doing an Abraham course, a seminar on one of the boats. We sailed down the Mexican Riviera. So we went on this luxury ocean liner, and we didn't have a lot of money, so we opted to have one of the cabins that had no window. And the ocean liner was a most luxurious thing, but the rooms were very, very small. And they were very small because you don't spend time in the room. You sleep and you wash and you get out of there and you go eat and you have fun and you party and you socialize. But I remember the first day of the seminar, we got into this room. There was a bed and there was only just enough room to walk around the bed. There was no window. And I freaked out and thought, oh, claustrophobic. Oh, my God, I won't be able to sleep. And I'm in total panic, right? And my husband's going, oh, calm down. We're not going to spend much time here. But I'm like going, I don't know if I need a window. I need to at least look out. I'm sort of like doing the claustrophobic thing.
Yeah.
We go to the first seminar and Esther says, so how are you going? Well, Abraham says, are you fussing and worrying about stuff? She just pointed out that we're in an environment where everything's taken care of. We don't have to pay bills because you pay for it all before. You don't pay for food or anything. Right. You're fed, you're housed, you're clothed, you're driven around, every aspect of life is taken care of, and still we're going to find something to fuss and worry about. And I just sat there and thought, damn, that's totally what I'm doing. I'm in the most luxurious, taken care of environment, and I am freaking out. And so here's a man in a jail cell who's having bliss, and I'm in luxury and I'm freaking out. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
I do know what you mean. It's right. I completely agree with you. It's all about our perspective of our reality and our reaction to it. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
It was such a wake-up call when she said that, because I realized, oh, damn, she's so right. Here I am.
Yeah.
Freaking out. And obviously I totally let go of when I walked into that room, instead of focusing on how there was no window, I didn't focus there, like I focused on a beautiful bed and a good night's sleep. Right. And the fun the next day and meeting new people.
Yes.
It's like where we're putting our focus and what we're thinking about where we're putting our focus is creating our reality, because our reality is really how we feel. Did you have a good day? Did you have a bad day? Right. Two people could do the same thing. One has the worst day of their lives. One has the best day. So whose reality is real?
Yes.
The person that enjoyed it, the person that didn't enjoy it. So we are creating our reality, and that's how we create our reality. So there's a lot of talk in the, how we create our reality stuff, which is talking about the stuff we create,
Yes.
the job or the person or the, and that's not what we're creating. We're creating how we respond to everything we experience. And what happens is that when we do raise our vibe and find things to feel good about and to enjoy, when we can enjoy all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly, when we can get sick and enjoy it, when we can say, thank you for looking after me. It's so nice for someone to cook me dinner, because I'm sick. When we can accentuate the positive, when we can focus on what's good about it, what happens miraculously is through the law of attraction, through coalescence of same, we just attract more things to be grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
We just attract more good stuff, just turns up.
Oh,
So
yeah. I totally agree with you on that. Yeah. You
Mm.
set the tone of your life and then the tone shifts into that expression. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
And I think
And
that's so important. I'm glad we've touched in on this because going forward and whatever the year brings, right? There's going to be, I would say the only thing we know is that we can't really know exactly what's going to happen, but we do know there's going to be more change, of course. And we do know that some of that's going to be uncomfortable for some, for many perhaps. But, to help people focus on staying positive, to help people, and not just positivity and just pretending like what's happening isn't bothering you,
isn't
but
happening. Yeah.
right. No, you acknowledge what's happening, you accept it, you integrate it into your system, you recognize when something's happening that's triggering some emotional string in you that's connected to something you haven't dealt with, a trauma you haven't released yet, and then that gives you the opportunity to release it, to integrate
Absolutely.
it, to become neutral with it, so that then you can continue
Absolutely.
to just enjoy yourself. And so I'd love for, we're kind of coming up here into the end of our time. I'd love for you to um, leave everybody with, what can they do over the next few months? Because we're still in it, and the world is changing in a way that we all need to really learn how to become
Acclimate.
better at accepting what's going on
Acceptance.
around
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and shifting our
Okay.
perspective. So what do you want to leave
There's
people
a
with
couple
on
of
that note?
points that they want to talk about, and I'll take that one first. Um, so like the work you do, you're transmuting energy. So this time of shift is about transmuting energy, turning fear into love. So we've explored separation, and we've explored fear to the nth degree. It's now Groundhog Day, right?
Yes.
And we're moving epochs, we're moving eras, we're moving yugas, we're moving into a new time on planet Earth where the exploration of separateness is less polarized, is less intense. And we're
Yes.
going to explore a new reality which is less polarized, not complete unity but less polarized. So we've got to transmute a lot of the things that were in place that gave us that intense polarity, and that's what we're doing as healers. That's what you're doing, that's what I'm doing. So when things arise, whether it is in the collective or personally, in order to transmute energy, you have to first acknowledge, you have to first be aware of the energy. You have
Right.
to see it. So like my guide said, as the light packets hit the planet, they gave me the analogy, if you live in a dirty house and just say planet Earth's been a dirty house, when you turn up the light, you get to see all the dirt. That's the
Yeah.
analogy they gave me. I'm a bit of a Virgo cleaner, So they give me these analogies, I
Uh-huh.
understand. So the light's being turned up on planet Earth, and all that's being covert is coming to the surface. So control systems and corruption and heinous things. So what we can do as light workers, and this is both collectively and personally, as we focus on what we're seeing, whether it is corruption and pedophiles and all sorts of things and pain and illness, and if you can gaze upon it, if you can put your powerful attention, your focus is the most powerful thing you have. It is you flowing energy at something. As I'm looking at you, I'm flowing energy in your direction, even though you're on the other side of the world. As you put your powerful attention on it, if you can see it from a place of light, see it through the eyes of source, if you can be in a place of appreciation and gratitude for it, your attention, flowing energy in that direction is what transmutes the energy. So many channels have talked about this, and Paul Selig's guides say the same thing. I can't remember his words, but that's the same thing. They say, you know, your attention to it as you see it from a divine perspective transmutes it. So
Absolutely.
we think as linear, you know, minded human beings that if I love something I disagree with, then my a love of it or gratefulness for it is going to expand it. So how can I love the pedophile? How can I love the terrible thing? You know, if I love them, then I'm agreeing with them, and I'm going to expand that energy in the world. So I have to hate them. Like that's where we've kind of got me.
Right.
But as we flow our hatred towards something, what you put your attention on, where attention goes, energy flows, right? So as you put your hatred attention on something you disagree with, be it your president or his opponent or whatever you're hating on, you're flowing hate energy into the world, and you're actually expanding that energy.
Yes,
so as you put
agreed.
your appreciation, and you can come at it from a perspective of, I appreciate that this has come into the light. So now that it's been exposed, even though it's shocking to think that this is true, that this is actually happening in our world, even though it's been exposed, I appreciate it's being exposed, and I'm going to look at it from my divinity and shine my love on it. And as I do it, just, you know, it transmutes from fear to love, from fear to love. Because this time on earth, the light weavers, you know, in 100 years to come, they'll look back on this time and they'll so cherish and be in awe for the people that came to transmute fear to love. Like you came to do that work. That wasn't easy. You know, that wasn't easy to witness it and then to transmute it, because we're witnessing what has been covert. So it's the same with pain in our body or emotions that arise. So as emotion arises, that's so unfair. I don't like it. You know, that's been living inside you. That's been living inside your subconscious mind.
Yes.
Where else do you feel like life is unfair?
Right.
How else do you feel? So as it arises, instead of trying to fix it and shove it down or get rid of it, can you love it? Can you say, thank you for showing me where I've held this energy in my body? And as you love the energy that arises, whether it's pain, can you love your pain? Can you love your upset? You transmute it. You transmute the fear.
Absolutely.
So that's a really big step.
Yep.
Another thing I want to say is that as you do raise your vibration and you start to acclimate more with feeling good,
yes,
what happens is when you do hit those speed bumps, those road bumps of upset, they feel so much worse when you've acclimated to a new vibration. It's like a little drama feels like a big drama because you're kind of not used to it. So don't beat yourself up for feeling down is what I'm trying to say. And there was some light workers online yesterday in a group I was in, you know, saying that I feel so exhausted, I feel so sick, I feel so this, I feel so that, because I have this big desire to be more joyful, be more happy, to be the light, to bring the bringer of the light, to be the bringer of the dawn, you know, like they really know that they're here to make a difference.
Yeah.
But they're still engaged in criticism and judgment and all the subconscious, life's not fair, and they're still engaged in so they've raised their vibration and then they hit those negative energies,
yes,
and they totally beat you up, right? It's like you hit, whereas normal people who get upset, they just soldier on. They go, I'm pissed off at that, and then right, let's go for a jog.
Yeah.
And so a light worker who's consciously raising their vibration, when they hit an upset, it kind of like wipes them out, and then they're like, I don't know why I'm so tired, because they're in resistance to it. They're like, I'm not supposed to feel like this. You know, I'm supposed to be love and light. So they're in resistance to it, and it just feels so worse. So what I want to say is if you do hit the road, the speed bumps of feeling upset or tired or whatever, just appreciate that too. Like just appreciate all of it. It's all guidance. When you say you want to be happier and you feel sad, then your guidance is going to get really loud. You said you wanted to be happy. So what you're doing with your energy by focusing on feeling sad is not doing what you said you wanted to do. So It's going to get really loud. So sadness and negative emotions start to get really loud when you deliberately try to be more loving and more happy. It's guidance. So if we can see all of it as guidance, thank you for showing me how I'm flowing my energy. I'm not happy at the moment. Wow, I'm doing that. Coming back to that radical acceptance and radical responsibility. I am doing that. Shit's happening that's making me sad, but I am choosing to be sad. So thank you, sadness, for showing me how I'm flowing my energy. Can I find another way to think about this that feels better?
Right. Right.
That's how we
Like
create our
that.
reality.
That is some good advice for us as we move forward to the next, who
Yeah,
knows
because
how many
more
years.
shit's more shit's going to happen, but
Because
it
we don't
doesn't
know.
matter. It doesn't matter. It's just the light
No, it
showing
doesn't.
the
You're
dark,
right.
right?
It's just that the way that we interpret it, the way we engage
We
with it.
respond. Yeah,
So,
engage.
Karen, I know you do work one-on-one with people, right? Are you still doing that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Good,
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
because some of the things and the tools I think would be really beneficial for the people that I've worked with before and people that are going to listen to this. And so the best way to get a hold of you is it through your website,
Yep.
karenswain.com. Okay.
KarenSwain.com. Yep, yep,
Yeah.
yep.
And always easy to work with that time zone because especially now that you are forward in your hour, it makes it even easier. So there's
Oh, it
always
does. We're coming into
so
our summer. It does. It makes it easier. Yeah, scheduling shows and groups and sessions are always easier when we're an hour because we go an hour ahead and you go back, and so we shift 2 hours.
2 hours. That's
Yeah,
great. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That makes it a lot better.
Well,
Well,
like
that's
you, I've got an online group. You've got your online group, and we talk
mhm,
about all this stuff, and I invite a guest teacher like you're doing in each month. This month we've had two. We had Laurie Ladd on
mhm.
yesterday, and hopefully Penny Kelly's coming up. So we're exploring consciousness. We're exploring deliberate creation. Look, we kind of go everywhere. I tell people I talk about deliberate creation, but I talk about everything because I'm just so loving everything. you know,
Uh-huh.
mantids, genetics, galactic,
Right.
different dimensions, astral travel, life after death, near death experiences. I go there. It's just the expansion of awareness and consciousness. And I
Mm.
think that when we expand our idea of who we are, this life just gets so much more delicious. We stop seeing it from our personal wants and desires, and we start seeing it from a collective point of view of how we can expand consciousness and play inside consciousness. It's,
Mm.
what we can do. I'm really excited about Caroline Corey's new movie called Superhuman, showing kids reading books and playing sport completely blindfolded. So they're seeing life through their third eye and not
Mm.
using their physical eyes at all, and telekinesis, moving things with their mind. We're in this accelerated expansion of consciousness, and it's so
Absolutely.
exciting. It's
It
just so
is
exciting.
exciting, and I think that's a good thing to focus and accentuate, as you would say, because there
Exactly.
is so much excitement of different things and opening of consciousness happening. I completely agree with you.
It's
There's
so
been a big
exciting.
focus on the negative this year, and I love shifting that into some of the really exciting things that are happening too. The way that humans are changing, we're adapting, we're evolving, and we're
Mm.
becoming all that we can be. One thing that the mantis have talked to me about is that every species or every organism goes through this process, or consciousness goes through this process of going from formless to form and then back to formless. And
Right.
we have that metaphor through our life and death process, but
Yeah.
then really in the grand scheme of things, consciousness has that process as well, from being embodied to being, free of the body
Yeah.
and
Dense
having
and
all
subtle
that experience.
energy. Yeah, exactly. With subtle energy or light energy,
Yes.
and then we coalesce it and I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, pack it in again and it becomes
Yeah,
dense energy,
yeah,
and then
concentrate
it
it. Yeah.
concentrate it, thank you, and then we sort of like expand it out again and it
Yes.
becomes, yeah, just,
Yes. And
yeah,
we're on that
exactly.
path. Like we've gone over
Yeah.
the hump and we're on that path
Yeah.
now. We're moving again towards formlessness. And that's very exciting because there's so much amazing stuff that happens along with that, interdimensional travel. And like you said, astral
Oh
projection,
yeah.
all those things become so
Oh
much more
yeah. Remote
easy to
viewing.
do
Oh God, yeah.
when you're not just focused on this one dimensional realm, and you can start to open yourself
Exactly.
up because you're not, even the energy on the planet has shifted to be more amenable to that kind of travel and that kind
Oh
of
yeah.
soft focus, where I can be focused on this reality, but I can also be focused on another two or three realities simultaneously, and
Oh,
then hold
absolutely.
all that within my one container. That
Hmm.
I'm, that we all become the alchemist. I'm the container. My awareness is the container, right? And I'm, transmuting energy, and I'm watching, observing, I'm participating in this and that, and I'm in dream world and I'm in this world, and I think that's super exciting for humans to be able to embrace that, and that's where we're headed, and all the stuff that looks bumpy and ugly and yucky along the way is just sort of collateral collateral damage, but
Well,
it's
yeah.
part of the experience too, to get us to shake it up and let go of our
Yep.
expectations and our
Hmm.
attachments so that we can become formless. You can't become formless unless you let go of all those attachments to
Yeah.
that
More
one thing that you
multidimensional.
are.
Like you're saying, the kids that are
Yeah.
coming in are so scattered in their focus because they can focus in all these different realities simultaneously.
Yeah.
And when
And
you
we don't
say,
know
"Are
how to
you
teach
listening
them.
to me?" Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't know how to teach them. Are you
Nope.
listening to me? They'll go, "Yeah, repeat what I said, blah, 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 blah." But they're also talking to their guides and they're also
Yes.
over here and they're communicating.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, yeah, I know. To the to the old linear human mind, it looks like ADHD or whatever, and we try and dumb
Yes.
them down, slow them down, but they're just moving. They're moving faster. Their brains move faster there, and yeah, it's yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll let you go. We could talk all day.
I
I
know.
know. It's
So much fun.
our
Thank you
darling
so
one.
much for participating with my friends in the field, and
Friends
super.
in the field,
I
love
just
it.
love having you here. You are a friend, and we'll do it again. Let's do it again next
Yeah.
year and look
I'd
back
love to
on.
have you back on in the inner sanctum too. And
Oh, would
I'd
love
love to
to.
hear
Absolutely.
your perspective on what Tom Barnett said too.
Okay, I will listen to that, and
And
then
I'd love to hear, maybe you could invite him into your friends in the field. He's a little more nuts and bolts than spiritual perspective, but he's
uh-huh.
a really interesting dude. Really interesting. I'd love to see the two of you natter because you've both got that kind of background, that science
Yeah, yeah,
background. Yeah.
fantastic. I will
Mm.
listen in,
Yeah.
and again, if you want more information from Karen, go to her website. You can see she's got great interviews on your media site, on your ATP media site, and lots of fun information to learn about. And I just love also the way you just put everything out there for free, and it's just really accessible, and I'm sure it's helping a lot of people, and it's bringing that awareness to so many. So thank you for
Free and
that.
no ads.
No ads.
Some of the ads have because of copyright, but but mostly no ads. Big love, darling one.
You as well. Have a wonderful evening. Bye. Or I should say day. Sorry. It's me in the evening. Bye bye. Take care.